The Poet and the Stonemason. Part 1. Cumbria to California. Robinson Jeffers was one of the more noteworthy American poets of the 20th century, and his voice remains relevant and powerful today, thanks in no small part to his keen eye for environmental issues. Jeffers wrote for decades before he found his poetic voice. He first identified as a poet at about age 15. He published poems in magazines here and there, and he was even able to publish a book of modest regional interest at age 29. But he was not able to write poetry of much value until he began to work with stone at age 32, and that process took years. He finally broke through at age 37. In 1919, Jeffers and his wife purchased land at Carmel Point, California, and they hired a contractor to build them a house from the local granite. Jeffers, living off a dwindling inheritance, watched the contractor's stonemason at work. Impatient from watching time crawl, the poet put down his silent pen and hired himself on as the stonemason's apprentice. Jeffers learned from the stonemason as he worked, and once the house was complete, he began to build on his own: a garage, a tower, and a dining extension. As a poet, building with stone became a form of composition. The years that he spent working with stone revolutionized his poetry, not merely thematically, but also stylistically. The stonemason's trade had given him a fresh poetic voice. After many years of frustration, the poet had found his muse. The story of the poet has been told on many a tourhouse tour. But not so much for the mason who built the Jeffers house and taught Jeffers the trade. The poet's legacy recalls only the name Pearson, leaving posterity little more than a faceless shadow that existed only as the poet's teacher. But there was much more to this forgotten tradesman than the services he provided Jeffers for several months in 1919. That story takes us back to 18th century England. England's Lake District is her crowning natural wonder. It is the home of England's most marvelous lakes and peaks. Its landscape is dramatically post-glacial. Its heart, like that of California's Sierra Nevada, is a great granite batholith. This is the country that inspired Wordsworth. It is quite a good stone quarry as well if you're looking to build a church, a sheepfold, or a wall. On the southern end of Lake District National Park, there is a rough prominence named Buck Crag. That's also the name of a house there, the likely birthplace of Robert Pearson. He was born in 1772, the year his mother died. Robert Pearson's maternal grandfather had been a waller, a builder of walls. Robert's Uncle James was a waller in the nearby town of Dalton-in-Furness, also the town where Robert's mother had been born, and where Robert ended up. He probably apprenticed under his Uncle James. Robert Pearson advanced from waller to stonemason. 4 of his sons and a dozen more of his grandsons would be described variously as wallers, bricklayers, masons, and stonemasons. Over the generations, his descendants have scattered throughout England and into Scotland, the United States, Canada, and Australia. William Pearson was one of Robert Pearson's 5 stonemason grandsons to immigrate to Canada. William settled at Ashburn, Ontario, a hamlet outside of Toronto. Much of his stonework, built in a variety of styles, can still be seen around the towns of Whitby and Pickering. One of his creations, the Ashburn Schoolhouse, exhibits different styles of masonry on each of its 4 sides. William's children must have attended school there. The schoolhouse has been designated a municipal cultural heritage property. It is now the Ashburn Community Center. It appears likely that William Pearson also built the house named Thistle Haw north of Pickering. He probably did this job with his cousin, Reuben Pearson. This house is the centerpiece of a Canadian National Historic Site. It is an attractive example of random range ashlar masonry with short courses. The fine-cut stone blocks are arranged in an appealing, colorful mosaic. Lintel stones, large radius segmental arches, and flat arches head the windows. Other houses attributed to William Pearson include the Stone Lodge at Whitby, the William Heron House at Ashburn, and the Citadon Grove House in Pickering. This last house uses a repeating ashlar pattern with broken and unbroken courses. Atop the doorways and windows one finds lintels, and, in one case, a charming pointed arch. William Pearson's obituary summarizes his work as follows, quote, "Monuments to his skill as a workman are everywhere to be met with in driving through the Midland District. Churches, schoolhouses, and private residences bear witness to his handcraft." End quote. William also built and repaired bridges. He was a lifelong Episcopalian, but his funeral service was held in the Presbyterian Church for which he laid the foundation in 1857. William Pearson's sons Robert, James, and William Jr. all learned the mason's trade under their father and started out as stonemasons. Robert, the eldest, would work in stonemasonry and related trades for the entirety of his adult life. Records indicate that he may never have fully retired from the trade. When Robert reached age 21, he left for California, then as now a place with a surplus of fortune hunters and a corresponding shortage of tradesmen. Robert was based in San Francisco for 20 years. He resided at various addresses in the Mission and Tenderloin neighborhoods, relocating temporarily to San Rafael, Honolulu, and Santa Rosa as work required. During this period, Robert Pearson was usually listed as a stonemason, though he was also listed as a builder, a stone setter, and a stone cutter. Much of what was built in San Francisco in those years was destroyed by the 1906 earthquake and fire. Pearson was based in San Francisco for 2 decades, so he must have built something there. And what he built was likely impressive, judging by what he built outside of San Francisco in those years.